Good morning, everyone. Specialist Ware here. I'll be talking about servant leadership today. Before I start, I want to let you know about the overall risk assessment is low today. Just be aware of your surroundings, any trip hazards, chairs, tables, wires, and in case of an emergency like a fire, there's a fire extinguisher in the back, windows all around, and there's also that exit right next to you if you want to evacuate. I want to start off by saying servant leadership is basically not a leadership style, but more of a behavior of how the leader is supposed to behave. What is a servant leader? There's many attributes to a leader, but a servant leadership has 9 attributes. It is basically how a leader is supposed to serve his subordinates and his soldiers. So it's not about himself, it's about whoever's underneath him. So whatever he's doing is benefiting his team and his soldiers, not himself. That's the big picture of a servant leader. I believe that, and a lot of scholars believe that a lot of leaders are capable of being servant leaders if they work on 9 attributes. Larry Spears has studied a lot of different kinds of leaderships, and he focused mainly on servant leaderships, and he came up with that 9 attributes that makes and composes a servant leader. Start off with listening, empathy, healing, self-awareness, persuasion, conceptualization, foresight, stewardship, commitment to the growth of people. All those attributes, as I go through explaining them, they all combine together and they're kind of related. I'll start off by listening. If you have an excellent listening skills, that will make you a better leader as a servant leader. Because you rather listen, you're supposed to be listening more than giving orders, listening to your soldiers, listening to what your soldiers needs. Listening correlates with empathy. You have to be listening to show empathy. You have to be open-minded and make sure it's not sympathy, it's empathy. Empathy is so more of a, you listen to your soldiers, you understand their problems, and you understand what they're saying. You can relate to them. But sympathy is showing those emotions. We're not talking about showing emotions, we're basically talking about understanding them. And when you understand your soldiers more and getting to know them by listening, it actually helps bond together, and it actually helps with cultural awareness of your soldiers. Healing. By healing, that they mean by knowledge, support, and resources. You gotta give your soldiers knowledge that they need to conduct their tasks. You gotta give them support, whatever they need, and resources. So if you give a task to your soldiers, you gotta make sure that you give them that knowledge of what they're supposed to do, the support that they need, and also the resources that they need for them to succeed. And once you go through the healing process of giving them knowledge, support, resources, it actually helps the soldiers understand what they're capable of if they success. Once they succeed, that's when they start giving that initiative. You don't have to keep telling them what to do. They'll know what to do next. Self-awareness, that goes by the others too, the other slides. Self-awareness also is built up once you go through the healing, empathy, and listening, and through the other attributes. Self-awareness is what you give your soldiers to know themselves, to know what they're capable of. And then you focus on their strength, not weaknesses. You don't go off and beat them down about how they did this wrong. In life, we know like you do 100 things right, but once you mess up once, a lot of people will focus on that one mess up, and they will get you for it. So more of a servant leader, you gotta focus on their strength. Use your soldiers use their strength. So that soldier's good at something, use that, and make him know that he's useful, you know? So let them know themselves, know they're self-aware. and then self-development and engage. So once you actually give those soldiers a platform to do what they're good at, it will actually help them self-developing and make them more engaged in their commitment as a group. Persuasion. Persuasion goes back to empathy and listening as well, as they all combine together. Persuasion is more of your influencing. You want to be a role model. You want to encourage your soldiers to do things. You don't want to be that leader who always giving orders and yelling at your soldiers. Of course, if they mess up, there's different aspects of it, but as a leader, you're supposed to lead them. You're leading your soldiers to success. You're showing them the success. You're being the example. You can't keep harping on them and ordering them. You will not be a role model. To be a role model, you have to have good persuasion skills. You have to show them what's right. You have to be leading by example. And of course, influence. Conceptualization is your ability to think about the bigger picture. The day-to-day reality is beyond that. We're not thinking about today. We're not thinking about just tomorrow. We're just thinking about the long-term goals. So as a leader, make sure you start coming up with strategies, mission, and vision, and of course your values. So once you have that goal in mind, it makes it easier for your soldiers to actually have a mission or a goal to everyone establish. So when that goal is established, everyone has that same drive, So basically, that's what conceptualization is about. It's thinking about the bigger picture. And what goes with conceptualization is foresight. Foresight is you predicting the future. You're looking at the past and learning from those past and understanding the consequences and going through foresight and understanding what the future holds. So about foresight is you're the leader, so you're supposed to think what's happening next. If you tell your soldiers to do something, you should know the consequences of that action. If you've done it before and failed, you should know that it's going to fail again. So learn from your mistakes, and that's what a good leader is about. Using that mistakes and learning from them. Stewardship. Stewardship goes back to foresight and the previous abilities as well. So stewardship is taking responsibility. As a leader, you're responsible for your soldiers. You can't be if you tell your soldiers to do something and they mess up, you can't just be oh, that's your fault. That's not right. That's not correct. You're as a leader, you're in charge of the soldiers, you take responsibilities of your soldiers. Whatever your soldiers do, whatever their performance was, if they fail, that's on you as well. If they succeed, that's on you too. So have a responsibility, own that responsibility, own it. Lead by example. And as a servant leadership, they are driven by being human shields. They want to protect their soldiers. They want to be that human shield that the soldiers will trust. So if your soldiers does something wrong, they'll come up to you and explain to you what they did wrong, so you won't have to go find it out with someone else. So that if you build trust with your soldiers, then of course leading by example. So you can't tell your soldiers something your values and what you expect them to do, and go ahead and do the opposite. That will discredit everything you say afterwards. If you don't lead by example, your soldiers will not have a role model. They will do whatever they want, just as you are doing whatever you want. Commitment to growth. Commitment to growth is about personal and professional development. It gets all those attributes that we talked about and put them all together. And that's what helps soldiers grow from just being soldiers, privates, and specialists to sergeants, and grow further if they want to be officers. So that kind of helps them develop their characters and personal and professional development as well. So even professional doing work, they'll know what they're capable of. And that helps a lot. And also, the last point is building a community. Servant leaderships do not want to work by themselves. They want to work as a community, as a team. So that sense of community drives them to be more engaged, more efficient in an organization like the Army. The Army is not an army of one. It's not just one person, it's not one sergeant, one specialist, and one private. It's all together. And that's what servant leadership is all about. You use all those attributes and you contribute to the success of the Army or the organization. So that's what we're talking about, having values and mission. You have the same objective, that you're be driven by an objective, which helps by your own team that have that same vision kind of thing. And also, as servant leader, it's good to build events that will make your team or your community get together and mingle. As a servant leader, there's a lot of different events you can do. You can just talk to your team and make them talk to each other and get to know each other, because once the team bonds and get to know each other, it will become super successful and super efficient. So summary of everything we've talked about. A lot of scholars have said that servant leadership can be taught. You can learn how to be servant leadership. You're not just born with it. Of course, some people are going to be born with it, but it is possible for everyone to be a servant leader. All you gotta do is work on those 9, 10 attributes, and it will actually make you a better leader if you start listening more, if you show empathy, and then if you try to build that community together, build your team, and own it. Own it. It's a big thing. So you should have a long-term approach. You're driven by serving and giving back to your team, because once you were a private as well, so you want to give back to that team. And anyone can become a servant leader. So that concludes my presentation about our servant leadership. If you have any questions, please let me know after class.